There are many great cities in North America, but there is one particular city that is constantly overlooked, and the disrespect is incessant. But no, I'm not talking about Montreal, which is a great city, not talking about Boston, and certainly not talking about Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I'm talking about a city that is a fusion of the New World and the Old World, high up in the mountains next to an active volcano, slowly sinking at an alarming rate, and was founded there because an eagle was eating a snake on a cactus. Yes, this is Mexico City. But here's the thing, I have always heard so many negative things about this city. However, I need to share what makes the urban fabric so compelling that I think if you love cities, you'll need to travel there and walk its streets. There are just so many neighborhoods here that I have to show you that you're not going to believe exist in North America. Mexico City began in 1325 as Tenochtitlán, the capital of the Aztec Empire. Founded on islands in Lake Texcoco, the city was a marvel, and it had canals instead of streets, massive temples, and a larger population than most European cities at the time. In 1521, the Spanish conquistador Cortés conquered the city and rebuilt it as the capital of New Spain, using Aztec stone to construct colonial churches and plazas. Over centuries, the lake was drained to prevent flooding, permanently reshaping the city's geography. As Mexico City moved into the modern era, it exploded in size. Industrialization in the 20th century turned it into a magnet for migration from across the country, transforming it into one of the largest metropolitan areas on planet Earth. Today, Mexico City is a megacity of more than 20 million people, built literally on top of the past. Aztec temples sit beneath colonial cathedrals, which sit beside glass office towers and concrete housing blocks. You can exit a modern subway station and find yourself standing in an ancient plaza. This layering of indigenous, colonial, and contemporary life is what makes Mexico City so complex and fascinating. It's not just a city with history, it's a city where history is unavoidable, visible, and still actively shaping how people live, move, and build today. At the heart of the city is the Zócalo, officially known as the Plaza de la Constitución, and is located in the historic center, and it's one of the largest public squares in the world. It has served as the city's core since the Aztec times. The Mexico City Metropolitan Cathedral sits directly on top of the ruins of the former Aztec main temple, making the layering of history here impossible to ignore. The city surrounding the plaza is laid out mostly in an orthogonal grid, though in certain areas it shifts to be something more reminiscent of Baroque planning, with diagonal streets cutting through the fabric. Walking through this area is endlessly fascinating. The buildings are patinaed, wonderfully aged, and feel like they belong to another era entirely. The level of detail is incredible. With the stone masonry work and the craftsmanship, you'll never see a building built like this today. If you're visiting Mexico City for the first time, I genuinely recommend spending hours walking around and exploring this area. I mean, it's not every day that you see a McDonald's operating in a building that looks like it's 400 years old. Many of the newest buildings in this part of the city only date back to the 1920s, and simply put, there's no other major city on the continent that feels this historic, largely because none of them have been around as long as Mexico City has. Just to the west of the Plaza de la Constitución is another famous landmark that deserves attention, is the stunning Palacio de Bellas Artes. Yeah, I probably butchered that name. As a prominent cultural center, it genuinely looks like something you'd expect to see in Paris, except it's right here in North America. And that's the feeling I kept getting while exploring. The city carries the energy of old French and Spanish urbanism, but filtered through this distinctly Mexican style and aesthetic that cities in the US and Canada just can't even come close to. But of course, no great city can exist on history alone. Cities need places for innovation and modern life, and that's when we start looking westward in the city. The corporate Central Business District is where the city is building its newest modern skyscrapers, stretching along the famous Paseo de la Reforma, with the iconic Angel of Independence monument standing proudly in the center. This corridor was intentionally made to be Mexico City's modern face. Wide boulevards inspired by European avenues, lined with embassies, corporate headquarters, luxury hotels, and some of the tallest and most expensive real estate in the country. Reforma is also where the city experiments with new seismic-resistant towers, twisting and tapering, being that they are built in an area that is extremely prone to earthquakes. During weekdays, it feels fast, efficient, and corporate, but something that I hope is built on in the rest of the city. On Sundays, the streets are closed to cars and transforms into a public space, revealing a different side of the central business district. Joggers, cyclists, and pedestrians temporarily reclaiming this to be a place to linger. But I have to admit, this isn't where the soul of Mexico City lives. It all feels a little too new, too polished to capture the character that makes the historic districts so special. That said, it works perfectly fine as a business center. The promenade eventually leads to an elevated park which sits atop a beautiful historic castle at its peak. Walking up there, I quickly realized how challenging it can be. After all, Mexico City sits at 2,240 meters above sea level. And for anyone with asthma like me, the elevation can be brutal. So a fair warning to my asthmatic brethren, pace yourself or prepare for some wheezing along the way. But the standout area in the city that I just can't stop thinking about is the Roma Norte area. This neighborhood sits between the central area and the central business district. I may or may not have made this whole video just to talk about this place. It's laid out in a series of blocks circling around the Parque España and the more appropriately, yet not that creatively named, Parque Mexico. It's a really unique city grid layout that is actually genius for creating a rich and intriguing cityscape. It allows for the roads to flow to these central parks with its elliptical design. So if you're like me, where you just start to wander around the city design itself will lead you to these two parks effortlessly from any given point. The block sizes vary here slightly, with the lengths ranging roughly from 55 to 150 meters, and widths around 35 meters. That's noticeably smaller than New York City's block structure, which gives pedestrians more choices and shorter distances between intersections. As a result, walking through this area feels far less fatiguing and more engaging. There's also a clear hierarchy of streets, with quiet neighborhood streets feeding into larger, more active avenues. Those major avenues have a really thoughtful urban design move that I genuinely enjoyed experiencing firsthand. Running down the center of the road is a protected linear greenway, something I haven't really seen done elsewhere in North America. By splitting the roadway in half, it visually reduces the scale of the street and makes it far less dominated by cars. The added greenery brings life to spaces that would normally feel wide, exposed, and scaleless. And honestly, I really hope this is something that gets replicated more often north of the border. And all of them have such a wonderfully curated assortment of trees. Now, I am an architect, not an arborist, so I don't know the names of these trees. But here we see a type of palm, here a type with large elliptical leaves, and here is a tree that has fallen on some hard times, and we have all been there, so let's not judge it too harshly. And look at the purple blooming jacaranda, the Latin word jacaranda mimosifolia. And no, I didn't look that one up, I just knew it. The roundabout Fuente de Cibeles is just a great urban space. It feels very permeable and easy to access, unlike some other monument areas we saw in the city. The fountain is refreshing, and the trees provide shade, which is something I feel is an afterthought to many public spaces around the world. The pavers, the planting, the size of the space is just a lovely square to filter through. And now let's look at the heart of the Roma Norte area. The buildings lining the parks have wonderful outdoor spaces and plants on every balcony. The scale of the buildings surrounding these parks are just perfect. They're basically level with the height of the trees. And that's what you'll notice immediately about this area is the scale. The buildings are small, which means you're constantly stumbling onto something new and interesting. a tucked-away cafe, a great restaurant, a piece of architecture that feels like it could belong in southern Spain. Then you'll turn a corner and see a modern building or even a church that looks like someone casually parked a spaceship on top of it. And sure, there's even a gong cha bubble tea shop tucked away in here, which honestly makes me love it even more. Seriously, if you've never had bubble tea, what are you even doing? But it's that constant variation that makes walking through the Roma Norte area so engaging. The architecture feels almost collage-like. Looking towards the park, Parque Mexico doesn't really end at its edges. It bleeds outward into the surrounding streets. It becomes part of the everyday fabric of the neighborhood. The plant density here is incredible, and it continues the park's canopy well beyond its formal boundaries. Inside the park itself, you'll find winding walking paths, places to sit and have a moment of repose, and a mix of fascinating public monuments and formal gathering spaces that actually get used by the people of Mexico City. And this is exactly why I tend to prefer parks of this scale. You can feel immersed in the greenery and nature, but you will never lose the sense of being in a city. And at no point does the urban edge feel too far away. And it's that balance that makes places like this work so well. At a certain point in the neighborhood, the parks and the blocks just converge in kind of a chaotic moment, and the balance between the planted areas and the buildings start to feel completely skewed towards the greenery. I do wish some of these streets were closed to cars, or at least had less parking. Spaces like this remind me how cities can feel both chaotic and alive all at once. Looping around the city counterclockwise from the Roma Norte area is a neighborhood that looks actually like it's its own distinct town and not surrounded by a massive city. It's the unique Coyoacan district. At its heart is Plaza Coyoacan, a true civic anchor. If there's one thing I want you to take from this video, is this: world-class cities make their districts legible. And one of the best ways to do that is through a multi-purpose public gathering space like this, aka a town square. This one, of course, is framed by beautiful civic architecture and has very active edges. Coyoacan's architectural character is defined by a distinctly bohemian charm, 16th century colonial buildings, colorful facades, and narrow cobblestone streets. This is also where the Frida Kahlo Museum is located. I didn't go there when I was there because it was surprisingly expensive, but everyone I talked to says it's absolutely worth it. So check it out if you go. What's most interesting about Coyoacan isn't just how preserved it feels, but how intentionally slow it is. The narrow streets, irregular block patterns, and frequent plazas quietly prioritizes slowness over movement. You don't pass through Coyoacan, you linger. The neighborhood encourages sitting, watching, wandering, and returning, which is something modern cities often try to manufacture, but rarely achieve. Coyoacan really shows that a strong sense of place doesn't come from density alone, but from restraint and allowing a neighborhood to remain unique. And that's the larger point. Mexico City isn't one experience. Each district has a distinct identity, and depending on where you choose to live or explore, the city can feel completely different every time. So looking at all these different neighborhoods, it begs the question, how do people actually get around in a city this big? And more importantly, is the transit any good? Before diving into that, if you're enjoying this video, please hit like, and if you want to see more videos like this, consider subscribing. And also, I'm launching member-only videos on YouTube and Patreon soon. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, consider becoming a channel member or supporting on Patreon. Links are in the description below. So Mexico City's transit system is enormous, heavily used, and constantly evolving, though it's not without its challenges. Serving a metropolitan area of roughly 22 million people is one of the largest transit systems in the world. The city relies on a mix of heavy rail, rapid bus transit, and even cable cars to keep everything moving. I mean, don't you wish you could just get places by flying through the air like these cable cars? Another thing to keep in mind is that Mexico City is much more affordable than a city like New York City, and this fact has attracted a lot of newcomers. Locals have of course raised concerns about this, as rising demand can push up prices and make it harder for residents to keep up, a challenge that the city is actively trying to manage. And of course, it needs to be said, no city is perfect. Crime is something to be aware of. I didn't experience any issues personally when I was there, but it's important to stay informed and to take precautions if you're visiting or moving here. And yes, the city is also slowly sinking, and hopefully that doesn't fill you with existential dread. Though if you're anything like me, you're probably already feeling a little dread about something all the time anyway, so it's not something to lose sleep over. When you zoom out and look at Mexico City as a whole, it's hard to understand how it's been so consistently overlooked. This is a city with deep history layered directly into its streets, neighborhoods that actually feel distinct from one another, parks that blur seamlessly into daily life, and an urban scale that prioritizes people far more than most cities in North America ever have. It is not perfect, but no great city is. But what it does well, it does exceptionally well. Mexico City offers something older, richer, and feels more authentic. It's a place where you can just wander without a plan, stumble into something beautiful, and feel like the place was designed to be lived in rather than just passed through. And once you experience that, it becomes very hard to look at other North American cities the same way again. Thank you all for watching.